Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast. I'm here with Doug C. Brown, with C stands for charming. And I have a guest today that I'm really excited about. The first time I ever met this man, I was just like, wow, this guy is smart. And his name is Tom Searcy. He's the CEO and founder of Hunt Big Sales. And Tom is a unique guy. He was growing up in a very methodical environment. His father was very skilled in sales. Tom went on to be an engineer. And he's taken the process of how do you provide methodical process to sales, but to go after extremely large accounts. He has about 38% of the Fortune 500 under his belt as personal clients. So that's a lot of accounts, guys. That's like 190 if my math is right. And he's got companies like Disney, 3M, Chase Bank, AT&T, Apple, and hundreds more that he's been able to work with. And prior to that, he had a company, 4 of them actually, where they were a startup to under 10 million, and he built those to between 100 million and $200 million in less than 4 years. This man knows what he's talking about. He's got a process for going after large accounts, and that's what he did in those companies. We're going to have that conversation on and around that. He's also a renowned speaker, nationally. He's been in tons of magazines. He's an unbelievably great promoter, and he's a really, really nice guy, great family guy. I've met him, met his family. He's the top of the top. So I think you're really going to appreciate Mr. Tom Searcy, and we're going to now welcome him to the call. Tom, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you here on the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast for numerous reasons, but thank you for being here. It's a pleasure having you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Doug. Good seeing you, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance for us to talk some more.
So for our audience, Tom and I know each other, and we've done, I would say, some training together. I've done some tutelage underneath him and learned a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Tom is the founder and CEO of Hunt Big Sales. And prior to that, Tom, I'd love to go back in history a little bit, because you built, if I remember correctly, by the age of 40, was it 4 companies to?
That's right.
Now they all started below 10 million, right?
Yeah. So one of them was a complete startup. And in 4 years, we grew to $200 million in size. And then the other 3 were less than 10 million, and they grew up to 100 million. And each of those did that in less than 4 or 5 years. And so you get the privilege of making a lot of mistakes really, really fast when you grow that rapidly. And they weren't tech companies. I wish now that they were .com or tech companies and et cetera. This is services based. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of employees. You've got to hire them and grow them and add them and et cetera. But we were very, very fortunate in the people that we had. And we were very, very good as a small company in all of our environments. We were always the smaller player, beating very, very big companies and by selling large deals. So we would sell to the Fortune 1000, and then our competitors might be 5, 10, 20 times our size, and we'd still win, which was great. That's what fueled all of our growth.
All right, everybody, lean in, because you just heard the magic word, right? We sell large accounts, and Tom and his company, Hunt Big Sales, is you are the pinnacle of selling large sales as far as I'm concerned. And many of the people that I know also feel the same way. So lean in on this question, folks. Tom, so how'd you do this? You went from
Well,
10 million to 100, 200 million. I mean, how?
well, so I'll try and be as quickly as I can. First of all, I was raised by an engineer. All right. So, this is as much of an applause as it is a confession. So as an engineer, everything's about processes and systems and approaches. And I grew up on the operation side of the businesses that I wound up running. So my idea was that sales is not magic. All right. Sales is a process. And if you do the right things in the right order with the right people, you will produce a desirable outcome. You never build a production line with the idea that we'll put whatever we want in the front end and hope that we get whatever we want out of the back end. And knowing that it has to go through all sorts of big deals with big companies require kind of a very specific approach to getting that done. So what I did with the very first company was went into that company and said, we're going to look at our salespeople and we're going to redo all of this into a sales process in which the salespeople are a part of it. And so that means that processes have what? They have people and they have measures and they have the kinds of documentation that's necessary. And candidly, most salespeople go into this into the game and they say, hey, I'm experienced, I'm really good at what I do, and just kind of trust me. That's not the way big companies buy. You can get small deals like that every day, but big companies, you're going to need to have a sales process. My dad always taught me that success in sales is 90% process and 10% magic. And he says you earn the chance to do your 10% of magic because you followed your 90% of process. And I've followed that, and that's why we were able to land 190 of the Fortune 500 companies over the course of our career, multi-million dollar deals each.
I got to interrupt you. How many of those Fortune 500 companies?
190.
190 of the Fortune 500, because there's only 500 companies in the Fortune 500, right?
It's in the title, right? they put it right in the title. Yeah.
So that's 38% of the Fortune 500.
That's right. And all the deals that we count in there have to be $1 million or greater as far as annual revenues to us or to our client base. So we've got customers who hire us to teach them how to do all of this. And so when they landed a sale using this process, we look at that as a part of the collection of the community of people who are using the processes that we have. And right now it's at 190 of the Fortune 500. We're at my own background in revenue of running companies. Okay, we're in several multi-billions of dollars of revenues that were sold in that processing company. With our clients and what they've sold, we're at $18 billion using the processes and systems that we've got. And it's not magic. There's magic. I mean, Doug, you're a magician. I mean, there's things that you know how to do that other people maybe don't have the same instincts of how to look at things and hear somebody and respond. That's what I call magic. That's the personal connection and charisma and et cetera that salespeople have. But the other process part, that's initially uncomfortable to do. Mm-hmm. But if you follow it, your close rate as a company on really big deals goes up over 50 or 60%.
Your father passing along that teaching to you. I remember my dad, I think we had this conversation at one time. My father passed along a process to me too. My dad had a business for 18 years, but he built it on his back. And, growing up in that environment, I learned that, and then I had to learn to undo it. But being taught that sales is a process, because, I think your words were sales is not magic, sales is a process.
Right.
And what I've witnessed over time, I mean, certainly your dad teaching that and you're passing it along to other people, this is awesome. What I've witnessed is when you take an average sales team, and I've done this many times, and I know you have too, and you put a standardized process around the sales process and hold them accountable, sales go up magically.
Magically. That's right.
Right. So I just had a client, I think we talked about this. We put a new process around, and in 60 days, they grew by 25%, right? They did the campaign. We sold almost $5 million in 60 days. It was
Great.
Wonderful. And I know you've had plenty of really success stories there. Do you mind sharing one or two of those with everyone?
Sure.
If you can. I don't know if you're under non-disclosure with these.
Oh, I'm under non-disclosure everywhere. So I have to be careful about how I say this, but I'll do the best I can to make this relevant. So we were, at the time that this particular deal happened, we were a $30 million company, and we were selling against IBM and EDS for a huge outsourcing contract that would be $400 million in size. All right, we're a $30 million company. Who knows why we're even in the room? They started off with 40 people they invited, 20 people bid. You get down to the final 10, and then you get down to the final 3, and we made it, right? We're trying to figure out why we made it. We had this very specific process that they had, and that one that we were following, and et cetera. And so we got through the process to the very end of the final 3, and it's us, EDS, and IBM. I mean, and this is for a huge transportation company, one of several that you are all seeing at your doors during this holiday season, that is delivering cardboarded boxes. All right. So it's going to be one of the names you know. All right. So we're going to take over customer service, trouble ticket tracking, and all the rest of those kinds of things. And it's going to take 1,000 employees to do this, and et cetera. And we're this little company. And what happened in the sales process is that everyone was orchestrated specifically from the very beginning of how do we pair up. When I said the very beginning, back when we were 20 companies that were going after this business, we had already prepped and targeted those people who were going to be in the back room, the final room where the decision was made, and the people behind them. We'd lined up all of our people with them and had begun communication back and forth, even just introductions and all of the other pieces, providing them some intellectual property about the industry in general, technologies that they should be aware of, not specific to selling to us. So that was all credibility building and relationship building. And this was unusual against what other companies were doing, who were just focusing on maybe 2 or 3 of the decision makers. We'd lined up people to people, peer to peer, way earlier in the sales process. So we'd worked through and asked a series of what we would call a rubric of questions for each of our sections. So the IT people are asking these particular questions, and HR people are asking these particular questions, so on and so on and so on. So that's in our sales process. We're gathering our information, we're preparing our responses. As we move through the process, what we found out later on, I started working with one of the people who left that company and went to another company and became a client of ours. I didn't know that he was one of the people in the background of that room. He'd seen the whole sales process, but I didn't know him. And so later on, I said, how did we win this? He goes, you weren't supposed to. I go, what do you mean? He goes, we just used you. He goes, no offense, but we just kind of used you guys as an outlier. You're kind of like the stalking dog, because you guys always had creative ideas and you had things that you were going to break, but we're going to go to one of the big guys and we're going to take some of your ideas and move them over as a part of the requirement. I'm like, well, thank you very much, because you won the business. Shut up. So here's how. So it's moving all the way down to the very end of this process, and each step along the way, people kept including us in because they said, I had a very interesting conversation with this person, or I really like the responsiveness of that person, or these guys are, they treat us a little differently, or, it's funny, we've talked to 10 different people inside of the company, and from the IBM guys, they just got a team of 3 or 5, and they only want to talk to the senior guys. They don't care about what anybody else thinks along the way. So this is all built into the process, people to people, stage to stage, and I won't go through all of that, but my favorite part of it was at the very end when we're pitching. And for this particular piece of business, is a part of the magic of this is because we'd set the room. There's 20 people in the room. There's 10 of theirs and 10 of ours. So we'd set the room in advance. We put our people in between their people, peer to peer, on all the conversations. It was not a cold room. There wasn't anybody in the room that we had not either had an email with or a phone call with the person sitting to the left or the right of them. So we go into our presentation, which is the final presentation, and we went up to the front, and I wrote down, here are the 10 reasons why you're not going to hire us. All right. And so they laughed, and I had the 10. I said, is there anything else that you guys are the reasons you're not going to hire us that's not up there? And one of the smart asses in the back said, well, there's 3 of them I hadn't thought of, but I'm glad you added them up there. I said, okay, great. So if we can go through and take these 10 off the table, the reason we're one of your top 3 is because you like us. You like what we do. You like everything we're bringing to the table. So all you're trying to figure out right now is why you shouldn't hire us. Okay. So I'm going to knock those pegs down. And at the end of it, you've got really no choice but to hire us, because the only reason we're in the room is because you really, really want to work with us and you're afraid you're not going to be able to. I said, I know the other guys who are going to come in this room. Ask them this question. Ask them what position in the top 10 customers you're going to be for them. I said, if their answer is that you're not in the top 5, then it'll tell you right now, and I'm talking about total revenue. If you're not in the top 5, then you are an asterisk at the bottom of their priority list. I said, I want to let you know you will be our biggest customer. You should have been able to figure that out from our financials. And every day, myself and my team are going to hit the floor out of our beds, feet on the ground, saying, what can I do better to serve you and make you happy? So, and then we took the top 10 and we knocked them down. Our whole presentation was based on this. And every one of them, so one of them was on the IT person side, one was on the HR person side, one was on the compliance side, so we had them all mapped out. So when the list was up there, the list was about them because we'd already had the relationships established and et cetera. They'd already told us what they were concerned about. We built our presentations around that. And the other one, which was what we call planning the landmine, which is the ask them what position they're going to be. And I said, and by the way, if they tell you they're not certain, but they're sure you're going to be one of their big ones, they've just told you everything you need to know. So that was the other part of the landmine, was that they knew somebody was going to say, well, we're not certain, but we know you're going to be one of our big ones. They've just told you you're not their biggest one.
Right. I mean, all right, I got to ask this question, then I want to unpack some of what you just said because it's brilliant. So how did it feel to close that account?
Oh, it felt great. Are you kidding? Steak and champagne. But the problem is the minute you close that account, you got to start doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, like it was steak, champagne, and planning session. Problem is that if you have a planning session after the steak and the champagne, the quality of the planning session that night is not as good.
Depending on how much champagne is flowing, for sure.
Trust me, on a deal that size, it was a lot. But it felt great. And there's a Davy and Goliath component of this that I don't want to understate. I always we love it as our company. And the companies we work with, we love crushing Goliath. There's nothing that feels better, because I believe that sometimes the companies that we sell against are they're entitled. They feel because they've got the biggest brand name in the marketplace, or they've got access to more funds, or they've got whatever than we do, that they just deserve to win the business. They're IBM or they're EDS, and so they deserve to win the business. And why should this little tiny company over here win the business? They think of us as an ant. And I'm like, okay, I love that. I'm going to go eat your lunch. Nothing tastes as good as the food you take from an enemy's table.
Whoa.
I don't know who I stole that from. I think it was Sun Tzu, but nothing tastes as sweet as the food you steal from an enemy. And so I love that. And that's why I love small and mid-sized companies. I don't want to teach big companies how to crush Davies. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm on my sermon box.
No,
right now.
Thank you. There's so much to unpack in what you just said, and I'm going to try to do my best here. But here's what it is. I mean, firstly, folks, if you're winging it, you're going to get small accounts. If you have a process, you're going to get big accounts.
That's right.
Right. Process in this case also was in selling large accounts. You must have a peer-to-peer relationship on every level of the account. That's part of what I got out of your process, Tom. I also got, you're going to take away heading off objections in the presentation component of it, because you use what some people would call negative selling, right? Hey, you don't want me, and I'm going to show you the reasons why you do. However, you did something above and beyond that, which is you took that concept and you baked it into pretty much the presentation was around knocking off those objections that people have. And you discovered those earlier. And a lot of people would have just, they don't understand. You have to do this in all sales, folks, but especially in these large sales. You have an attitude, which is I'll show you. And this comes up in a recurring theme by all people that I have interviewed here on the show who have done more than $5 million a year in revenue. They have this determination. Chet Holmes used to call it pig-headed discipline and determination, that I'm going to show you, I'm going to win. And that has to be baked into the process as well. And I think the last thing I got out of this, and I might have missed something, Tom, so fill us in if I did, but you're not differentiating yourself. you're becoming different. You're the don't take this wrong, Tom, but you're the beautiful girl walking down the beach in the crowded amount of people that catches the guy's eye when she's, a half a mile off. And as she gets closer, there's more desire being built. And that's what I see you did through the whole process with this. Did I miss anything?
And no, I just want to expand on what you just said because it's so critical. The minute you are being measured on a rubric that everybody else is playing against, right? Some sort of a measurement standard, like something that you'd find out in an Excel spreadsheet, and somebody's just checking off boxes, you're a commodity because everyone believes they understand what the flavor of value, what the perspective is. And so differentiating versus being different, differentiating is an incremental variance from some presupposed belief set. Like I know it has to weigh 250 pounds or less. And the other person comes in and says, I can do that for 240 pounds. Another person says, I can do it for 230 pounds. You're differentiating by somebody says it's got to be less than 250 pounds. That's a standard that was set and a rubric for further evaluation. All right. Now, if you're different, you come in and you're able to describe or define yourself by saying, you don't have a 250-pound problem. All right. You have a wind drag problem. You have a crane lifting problem. You have a mechanism over here problem. You've got the size of door for delivering the freight through, and that's why 250 pounds in, et cetera. Let me show you what the real issue is around how you're going to get the value that is not around being 250 pounds. And oh, by the way, I'm still less than 250 pounds, but that's not the point. I don't want to be the decision you make because I have fewer pounds versus somebody else. I want you to re-examine the entire decision. And then, by the way, because the problem isn't the 250 pounds, I still can beat the 250 pounds. I don't want to talk about that because that just says that that's an incremental improvement rather than a strategic value. Changes it. To your point, it's about being different rather than differentiation.
It's so critical, and especially in today. And I want to get into what's going on today, but I have so much I want to ask you that I know people will love to know, because, most of the people listening to this are just wanting to grow their sales. And one of the things that struck me as being different, as soon as I started studying your methodology and having the opportunity to talk with you and your business partner, the first thing that struck me was when you go after large accounts, most people are taught in sales or in structuring their company, a CEO, they're taught, let's go after a lot of leads, and then we'll bring the funnel down into a point. And those small amounts that are on the point, those are going to be our best clients. And that's what's going to shake out of the funnel. But in Hunt Big Sales, unless I'm incorrect, you start with a small top, and then it gets wider as you go down through your qualification process. Is that correct? And would you speak to that?
Absolutely correct. I guess I talk about it in two particular ways. Let's go back to the process, or the inline manufacturing process. And if at the end of which we wanted that manufacturing process to produce a very large sale for us, right?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't take wheat, steel, and rubber and put them in the same front end of an inline manufacturing and coming out the back end expecting that you're going to get the same product, right?
Correct.
You'd be very specific about the materials that you put into your inline manufacturing process, and they'd have high specs, right? So they would have to be not only steel, but this kind of steel and et cetera. For us to effectively use a sales process, you have to put the right stuff, the right components and characteristics or qualifications into the machine. So we try to make certain to keep everything out of the sales process machine that we possibly can that won't generate a big sale at the end. So for us, that starts off with, in our case, for our company now, we have 11 questions that we ask that company around not only just who they are, where they are, what they want to do, and et cetera, but also we ask questions about past behaviors. Have you ever hired an organization outside of yourself to make significant differences in your company? A lot of companies have never outsourced. We don't want to be their first one. It's like you never want to be somebody's first lawyer because they don't know how to pay you. They don't know how to value what you do. And they just look at every invoice and say, oh my gosh, once you've hired 3 or 4 lawyers, you've got other qualities that you can look at about them. In our case, we ask 11 questions to find out whether or not they can go into our sales process. And we help our clients to do the exact same thing. They have to build in upfront a decision of all the people you're not going to sell to. I don't want to figure out halfway through the production line that I really didn't want this account and then kick them out. I spent all that time and energy to get to a point where I'm deciding that I don't want this particular, and every company I've ever worked with says, I ask this question typically in keynote speeches and other places, and it says, does anybody here have an account that they wish they didn't have? I mean, the hands go up every one that they can get. And then I say, okay, using your other hand, do you have more than one? And everybody has the second hand up. Well, how did you get accounts that you didn't want? You sold to people that you didn't want to have, right? And if you're thorough enough up front, you shorten down that list, right? Of, the people that you're going to actually pitch to. And this isn't just takeaway selling or negative selling or whatever. This is, look, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get onto the production belt without these particular qualities. If they've got them, that's why the back end gets big, because the conversion rate goes way, way up. I can know from those 11 questions that I'm going to have greater than a 50% opportunity to close. Because if they don't have the necessary characteristics or qualities about them as a company, then I'm going to spend a lot of time selling to someone at the very, very end that I spent on a 20% conversion rate. I wasted 80% of my time and energy against my pipeline. And get rid of them early so you don't have to pay the pain of getting rid of them later.
Well, there are no bad clients. There are only bad decisions. That's a rule I live by. And you said something, in this criteria, and I've had the opportunity to look at all this criteria and work with Tom. So it's a highly defined criteria. It's specific. And in this criteria, though, one of the things that happened, even myself and anybody else in the room, we looked at them and our list got narrowed down very quickly. And we started going into a little bit of do I have enough people to actually go after? But, I would say 38% of the Fortune 500 already answers that question. But for those people who are kind of like, they're so used to going after a wider audience, versus a narrower audience and getting very specific, because if you just change one ingredient in the, the perfect chocolate cake recipe, you no longer have the perfect chocolate cake. Right. So, and I think Coca-Cola, don't sue me, Coca-Cola, but I think you changed your formula on something called the New Coke, and that didn't work out well. So people revolted against that. So when you have that perfect recipe, what you're saying is this is a perfected process. You don't mess with it. You just come into it. But how do people wrap their mind around, like, hey, I got all these ideas and these accounts and these things that I want to go after, but now you're going, well, we got to bring them right down into these specific categories.
It takes a lot of discipline in the conversation. One of the things that helps with that is when people understand that everybody might need your product or service, everybody could buy your product or service, but not everybody deserves your product or service. And when I say deserve, is that, it's not a uniform amount of energy it takes to provide high quality service to every one of your accounts. And so, not only does it eat into margin, but it eats the spirit of your organization to have negative clients, or clients that are very difficult to please, or clients that are not ready for the kind of value that you bring. We work with clients right now that, it's funny, they went from 100 prospects down to 20 prospects, and they were terrified that they just gotten rid of 80% of the marketplace. And then realized out of the 100, they were landing 4. And out of the 20, they were landing 7. And then eventually 12. And your answer is, what happened? Did the market get smaller? No. The opportunities that you wanted decreased in size down to 20. Now they're on their way back up to closing 12 of the 20, and they don't work. Here's the other part of it, is they don't work any more than a finite amount at any one given time. So they apply this laser-like focus, and that's what allows you to, when you go peer-to-peer, that's time, that's energy. You better not be just pushing that resource out to everybody. Your IT people start getting tired of not being able to do their job because they're talking to another IT person over here. They've got to know that the close rate is worth the time and energy that they have to spend. Otherwise, they're going to be saying, well, isn't this a salesperson's job? I'm like, look, after you get started with the people that like you inside of a company that's going to buy from you, the other people that are involved in that peer-to-peer, they don't want to talk to the salesperson anymore. Even if your salesperson is the best engineer, it doesn't matter. They want to talk to the engineer they're going to be working with. I worked with a top 5 advertising agency at one particular point. A friend of mine was running that agency and asked me to come and work with them for a while. And so we went and did some work with them. And one of the problems that they had was that they had all the creative people, and they had all the design people and the brilliant people, and all those people dealing with the marketing people was fantastic. And they didn't bring in the project management people or the program management people till after the close. And I said, there isn't anybody on your meetings or whatever who thinks they're ever going to see you very much after you close the deal. They know that the day in and day out team that's going to work with them is going to be the project management people, the program management people, the statistics people, and etc. I said, I want you to bring them, I want you to move them from the back after up front early and say, this is your team. Doubled their conversion rate. Why? Because the people wanted to talk to the people who are actually functionally going to be doing the work. And the conversations weren't sexy. They weren't salesy conversations. They were nitty gritty kinds of conversations, which is what the companies that they were selling to loved, because it was about the reality of us working together in the future, not the promises of beauty and wonder of the moment of the sales calls.
One of the hardest concepts that I have with clients that I work with is everyone in the company is in sales, and they push back immediately, Tom. It's never ceases to amaze me. Like, what you're doing is, you're IT people. When you're doing peer-to-peer, everyone is selling, and selling isn't, 2 salespeople and a manager going into a company, because the company looks at those 2 salespeople and the manager, they go, well, maybe one honest person in all 3 of them. That's kind of the positioning, right? But when you have influencers who can knock out a sale, and in a large complex sale, that happens. Even in smaller sales, this happens. But people are like, oh, no, you don't want to talk to the IT people because we stuff them in the basement, and they don't have windows, and they really not that, they can't really talk to other people, right? That type of thing. I remember a hospital one time I worked with, I was like, they literally told me this. And so, but when you take IT people and talk to IT people, it's kind of like having people who speak different languages, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, English, and Russian. And you put them together with people who are from their home country, they can relate to one another much better, which, folks, is communication, which is selling. That's what you're doing.
Well, you've said a lot in what you just said. And I think I've written on this, and if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a YouTube channel called Hunt Big Sales. And we put content up there. One of those videos, and they're 3 to 5 minute videos. One of them that I did up there is called Never Get Caught Selling, right? And the issue is that if you get caught selling, you're losing, because it feels like I want something from you that you don't want to give me, and I'm going to have to persuade you to give it to me. Terrible relationship kind of an approach. But if all you get caught doing is problem solving, then you are peer-to-peer. So when the IT people, you never say to an IT person, I need to take you to a sales call. IT person says, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to be in a sales call. I hate that. But if I say to an IT person, I'm going to a meeting, they've got a problem that's in IT. I don't know how to help them with the problem. And so I need you to go there and help them with their IT problem, with the thing that they're working on, or how ours works, and et cetera. He goes, I don't go on sales calls. I said, this isn't a sales call. We already had the sales calls up till now. Now I just need you to do what you do, which is help them solve their problem. Engineers, IT people, everybody in your organization likes to be the person who helps people solve problems. So I bring all those people into the conversation, and I just want to be very specific as a salesperson. You're going to go help these people solve this problem. You're going to go talk to them about that problem. You're going to ask questions about those problems and see what we can do to help them with those problems. I don't want you to sell. Don't get caught selling, because if you do, you're not going to look very credible. But if you're solving problems, and they love it. They love going. There's nothing better than solving someone else's problem. It's a lot better solving their problem than it is solving your problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly. I mean, I'd rather leave my office every day to go work with somebody else's problem than to deal with in my own office with my problems.
Well, that's what true sales professionals actually do. They solve problems.
That's right.
And so we solve the problem for them. It's win-win for both of us, right? Because they're going to buy in most cases when we're solving their problems and we're being genuine. Then they don't mind after we built that rapport to sell them a little bit. Like, like you did in that presentation. It's like, listen, here's the reasons why you're not going to buy from me. I know that. So let's talk about them. They know you're going into that process of knocking those off. And so sales has always been nothing more than communication. And I found you and your company to be at the top of the communication.
Thank you.
I mean, compared to any others I've ever talked with, especially. And there's so much I want to ask you, and I know we only have so much time. Because I know that people listening to this are probably glued to this right now. They're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing stuff, which it is. So clients today, or people today in business, they're facing new challenges that they've never faced in the past. And I know even in your business or my business, we faced this similar challenges. So what do you advise your clients to do today that they weren't doing, say, last year?
Well, this has been, so, I mean, we got thrown for a loop just like everybody else did. I mean, no one looked forward and said to themselves on January 1, when they're implementing the strategic plan for 2020, oh, by the way, we're going to go into full lockdown in March with a rolling set of changing of constraints based upon city, state, country, and company. Because companies started to implement sorts of things, and they either changed what their purchasing was going to be, or they wound up eliminating travel, either because they didn't want to travel or have their people travel or let people in, all those kinds of things. And, my company did almost 80% of our business was face-to-face. When we did product service, sales and training and development and et cetera, it was face-to-face on their site or on our site. And now that's gone. And we're like, okay. But what we did was we just started asking, what are our customers' problems, right? I mean, we serve companies that are small to mid-size who are trying to grow by landing large sales. That's their problem, and they need somebody to help them with that. So what we wound up doing was we developed this program called Selling in Place, right? Which is really, how do I more effectively communicate when I can't be in their offices or on their shop floors or at their corporate centers or whatever, and they can't come to my sites or my, view things. And I still have to develop the relationships I've got, sell more business as I can, grow the current accounts that I've got. So we developed this whole video program and workbook and et cetera that says, how do I translate communication strategies that I had before and problem solving strategies that I had before that were based upon being in their location, developing strong chemistry between people and understanding what school they went to, how many kids they've got, all those kinds of things. And that rapport building and relationship building, how do I change that, to this world of between the glass? And that, I think, was one of the problems on this issue that you're bringing up, which I think is critical, is the mechanisms of communicating, the way that we've communicated and our people we work with communicate before, was so very, what I would call tactile, right? So physical. It was so in the environment. When we take that away and we have to implement new skill sets, that's a real challenge. It's not the same. I mean, I equate it to people like saying, what's the Sunday phone call to mom and dad like versus the Thanksgiving meal when we're all in the same room? Is it different? Does it feel different? Yeah, it's very different. You used to go and have the Thanksgiving meal with your customer as a metaphor, right? You used to have the longer conversation, and maybe you would go to lunch and you'd have side conversations and et cetera. And now we're very much on the Sunday call, where we know the Sunday calls happen at 7. We know that that they're going to be done talking to us by 7:25. We'll say our goodbyes, and at 7:28, the phone call will end. How do you accomplish what happened in the Thanksgiving meal inside of the world of that call? So we developed that program to show that, because that was the problem that I think lots of companies, regardless of size, have. but that our companies that we were working with really had with their sales forces and then with their peer-to-peer relationships.
Well, the old saying that nothing is as good as a meeting in person, right? Because you can build rapport in different ways in person, but when you're doing it virtually, uh, it's similar, but it's a different game. It's nuances within the process of building. And I know your book, Selling in Place, does a great job at addressing that and many, many, many other issues. So I recommend it, everybody listening to go get that book. Also, Tom, you wrote a book that I love. It's called Whale Hunting. And that one I think people should also go after for going after large accounts. So Tom, if people want to get a hold of, you or Kara Jane or Zach or anybody in the company and others at Hunt Big Sales, how do you want them to get a hold of you?
Best place to go is to huntbigsales.com. It is exactly what it sounds like, huntbigsales.com. When you go there, the whole Selling in Place program is actually available. You can check that out and purchase this. You'll find that on the program or on the website. But also there's a contact us section. There's also an interesting thing which we really encourage people to do, which is to take a free assessment, which asks you a series of questions, and it then just says where you are on your growth trajectory. And describes what that looks like and what you can do about it. And all answers don't come to us. Remember, we've got our own file that says here, but I don't leave you hanging. There's recommendations of these are things that you can do that are not us. There's some people, some companies that go through and they say, you know what, here's why it would be a good fit for you, either work with us or work with someone else. Other people would say you should try something different than what we do. But it's a free assessment. It takes about 5 minutes to answer all the questions. And it tells you as a company, gives you a nice profile of where you are in your sales growth strategies and what you can do about it.
I have to vouch again for the assessment because I've taken the assessment. It's excellent. So go there now to huntbigsales.com, take the assessment, get the book, Selling in Place. If you want more information, contact Tom directly or one of the team members at Hunt Big Sales. Tom, there's so much I want to ask you, but I know we have time constraints, on and around executive sponsors, how to be a good promoter. I mean, you're an expert in all these fields. So I love to close our episodes with this particular question. And I was really looking forward to hearing your answer from this. So Tom, if you could be a superhero, whether it's living or no longer around or fictitious, and you could be that superhero for one day, who would that person be and what would you do to better the world?
Wow, this is how you want to end the conversation. I probably would enter into the world of Stan Lee at this particular point. I think I would want to be Bruce Banner, Hulk. And I would want to be Bruce Banner because he has an idealistic approach to the world as it is from this an intellect and problem-solving perspective, and being able to put out those kinds of things. And then at the end of the day, if things aren't working out, I just go break things. So if I'm not getting what so I try and help everybody out for 23 hours. And if people aren't just moving forward in a good way, then I'm going to say, fine, I'll just go break up all the pieces that we tried to put together. I know it's not enviable to be that guy, but I mean, if I was, some people want to be Superman and somebody want to be, all the rest of these folks and et cetera. At the end of the day, don't you just want to go break some things if it's not working out? Too much honesty? Is it too honest?
No, I think honesty is as it said, is the best policy, right? So,
right.
So I have to tell you that the lady that I'm dating, my gal, her favorite superhero is the Hulk. So
she's got good taste.
That's awesome. Well, I think we have to wrap it up. No, I want to do one last question. Tom, if you don't mind, you're a great promoter. You're everywhere. I read about you. I mean, it's when people are a promoter, and I mean promoter by getting themselves in the media, getting themselves out there so people read about them, talk about them, get them in a place where they're elevating them through third-party credibility as an expert, because you are an expert. How important is that in any company today now that they're selling virtual?
It is absolutely critical. We talk a lot about this in the Selling in Place program, and so I use this term an awful lot, but I think it's worth remembering, and that's called slice thin, cut deep. So when I say slice thin, you need to define very tightly where it is that you bring a kind of expertise. You're just, I am not an expert in everything. I'm an expert in this particular area, and then dive deep in what your expertise is. And I'll give just a quick analogy. I had a heart attack at one particular point. It wasn't this morning. I did not want a general practitioner at the ER to help me out. All right. And I didn't want a second year intern to help me out with my heart attack. Okay. I wanted a guy who was a cardiologist. I wanted an older cardiologist, by the way. I wanted somebody who'd had more than, say, 50 experiences in their career. And so that guy slices thin. He's a cardiologist. And the guy who helped me out was a specialist in stents, which are the things that they put, the little pieces that they put in there to help with your arteries and all the rest of that stuff to keep them open and et cetera. I wanted a stent specialist cardiology background. This guy was sliced thin, cut deep. Whenever you're doing promotion, you have to slice thin and cut deep on very specific areas of your what you do. One of the things I like about a lot of the things I like about you, Doug, is that you don't say I can solve everything for everybody, right? Your answer is, if you've got a problem that fits into this slice zone, right, your best choice is me. I'm not everything for everybody. I'm not great at all things. I'm good at many, but I am the best there can ever be in this particular space. And that would, if you're going to be a promoter, if you're going to be out there as a small company out in the marketplace, you have to find that out. You made something important when you said different versus differentiation. Differentiation says that everybody in my space is like this, but I'm just a little bit better, right? That's not slicing thin and cutting deep, all right? It's slicing wide and cutting just thin.
Wise words, sir. So everybody, slice thin, cut deep, right? We'll end on that. Tom, this has been awesome. I mean, this has been great. So I really appreciate it. I know the people listening appreciate it. I'd love to have you back on another call down the line if you'd like to.
Absolutely. This is always so much fun for you and I to spend some time together. It's great. And absolutely, we'll do that. And thank you so much for the privilege of being a part of what you're doing in helping companies to grow. I know that's more than just it's more than just a job or whatever. This is a vocation for you. It's a core belief, and it comes through in all the things that you do. So thank you for all what you're doing for small and mid-sized companies.
I appreciate that, Tom, so much. I'm very grateful, and thank you. And so to everybody, have a wonderful day. Tom, thanks again for being on here, and we'll see you next time. Okay, everybody. Wow, what a amazing interview that was, right? I mean, he's talking about a lot of great stuff, but I mean, if you think about some of the stuff he's talking about you're not going to go after all the clients in the world. You're going to go after a specific criteria of client. So if you're going after a specific criteria client, it's going to narrow down, because you can't have, if you're going after a specific target, you can't let other things get into that specific criteria. When you do that, you're now forced to study about that specific criteria. And that's what I learned from Tom. And the reality is, you definitely must have a process. I love what he said. Sales is not magic. Sales is a process. And in my business, teaching companies how to grow their revenues and optimize their revenues, I begin with process. I begin with the process, or as if you're listening to this from Europe or Australia or Canada, process, right? So we begin with a process, and that process will drive behavior. From there, you build up skills. And from the skills, there you have to start working on the other stuff, which is usually on and around mindset with people, because, we're dealing with people, folks. We're not selling to titles. We're selling to people. So salespeople, executives, managers, they're all titles, right? But they're people who have wants, needs, and fears. And Tom has taken this whole concept of peer-to-peer selling and put it into a place where any company can do this. I'm going to say that again. Any company can do this. Any company can sell very large sales if they know the process and they follow the process. And I can tell you from looking through his programs and being part of it and sitting in classes and doing things with this man, this process is highly and well defined. It wins every single time. He's proven this over and over and over. I think he has sold with his clients now over $18 billion worth of products and services. And he's also talked about selling in place today, his book, Selling in Place. And selling in place is about really how do you take your life from what it was back in 2019 and when the change happened in 2020. How do you take that and now sell from a virtual environment in place? And what do you've got to do that? Now, fortunately, I have had the experience of working virtually and helping companies virtually for almost a decade now. And even I doing this with my clients, I had to make some shifts as well because selling virtually is different. It's just slightly different than selling and in the face-to-face component of it. And so we've made modifications to myself and my company and our clients. And man, they're expanding their revenues this year because of it. So it's so great. Tom has a great YouTube channel. Go to that YouTube channel and Hunt Big Sales. And if you have any questions or you want to hire him directly, go there or come to me and I'll work with Tom and we can both work on your company together. So again, thank you for being here. If you like this podcast, please share it out with other people who, if they want to be able to sell large accounts, share the podcast, please. Spread the love, if you will. And if you like this or any of the other podcasts, listen, I always love 5-star reviews and I really appreciate it if you go do a 5-star review. And so thank you again for being here. It's been a pleasure. Again, this is Doug with Business Success Factors and the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast. And I will see you on the next run of our podcast where we'll have another amazing guest. Have a great day, everyone.